Over the last few months, I have been trying to improve myself. I'm trying to get more better at doing things, and that's not a regular occurrence for me. This is definitely something new. I spent a lot of years not doing any self-improvement, and over the last, as Christine said, 7 years, it's been a stretching process of growing myself. And I took a big step out this year, and I started working on a master's course, and I got an A. I did a thing well. So, and my first course, the course I took in the summer, was 3-week-long intensive, and it was intense. The professor kept coming back to this idea as a leader. I'm taking a master's in leadership. As a leader, the most important thing you can do is to develop relationships. And it's not something new to me, but it's something that just, the fact that all of the things I'm involved in are reinforcing this idea is really important. We also took a trip to Calgary for our summer fun excursion type thing. And on our road trips, we tend to listen to audiobooks. It's one of the things we do. And the audiobook we chose to listen to was this crazy long, I don't think Christine knew just how long this thing was when she downloaded it. It was a 22-hour long biography of Dietrich Bonhoeffer. It was, what's that, Christine? It's really good. It's a really good biography. It's very thorough. I know who his nanny was. And all those kinds of things, it's that in-depth. But one of the big things that Dietrich Bonhoeffer kept going back over as he developed his leadership skills and as he worked through what the church is supposed to be is that question of what is the church? And what he came up with is this idea that the church is actually about, the modern church, the church on earth is about relationships. It's about the relationships we build between each other and how those relationships can impact the world for God's purposes. So a course, a book is bringing that back, and several just general conversations that I've had over the last little bit have continued to kind of reinforce this idea that relationships are an essential piece of the puzzle when it comes to how we're supposed to live out our lives today on earth. So God's design for humanity emphasizes the significance of relationships as a cornerstone of not only our spiritual health and development, but also a huge impact on our physical health and wellness as well. So just as Jesus surrounded himself with his disciples, we are called to embrace the beauty and challenges of relationships as essential to our journey of faith and growth. Now, I'm not going to succeed at this, just so we can be clear. When I was writing papers for my master's, when I have to prepare stuff like this, I always go in because the word relationship begins to not lose its meaning, but it begins to just kind of be super repetitive. And so I do what every other good scholar does. I go to the thesaurus. And I was in the thesaurus looking up the word relationship, trying to find an alternative word. And there aren't many that I feel are as good or as impactful or as directly meaningful. So I was going through them, trying to find words that were similar to relationship or meant the same thing. And as I'm scrolling through that, I came to antonyms, which is a language artsy type word. That means words that mean the opposite. I had to learn that today. No. And as I was looking at that, it really kind of struck me, relationships are such an important piece. And as I looked at the words that mean the opposite, they were like a sucker punch to the gut. They're words that I find super abrasive and the world today is very stuck on those opposite type of words. So I'm gonna read the antonyms. Division, antagonism, disconnection, opposition, and separation. Those words, when I think about people and the pain of the world today, and I think about where people are at and how you see people fighting and pushing and breaking everything around them, those words feel like the core. Sorry, that was very loud. The core, though, of what is wrong in the world right now is relationships are a lost art. And we live in a world where isolationism is what we're kind of called towards. So that just hit me. And as I was reading through my Bible for some of the verses I kind of wanted to bring to light here, Philippians 2:15 came out. It says, it's kind of related to when you accept Jesus into your heart and you begin to live for Jesus. It says that you may be blameless and innocent in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. And I think that relationship, if you think about this verse, when we work really hard at developing relationships, not just relationships between each other, but a relationship with God, and when a relationship with God permeates into our being and at the very core of us, we can then work on making really good relationships. And that idea that we can be children without blemish in such a broken world is exactly what I want, like as a dad, as a brother, as a friend, as all those, like every different relationship that I have with people. I want my relationship with God to be so apparent and to develop into something between us that I can shine as a light. When the world gets a little bit dark, you and I, because of a relationship with Jesus, will shine as a light in the world. So, relationships are, like right from the very beginning of the Bible, God establishes that relationships are important. It's like one of the very first things he does. He makes all of the, I'm going to just call it less important stuff, the earth and the animals and those things. And then he makes man, and he looks at man and he's like, in Genesis 2:18, he's like, it's not good that man should be alone. I'll make a helper fit for him. And I realize that that's the creation of like the husband and wife relationship, the man and woman type of thing. But God is recognizing that we are inherently social beings. We like to relate to somebody, and we like somebody to relate to us. So that, the creation of Adam and Eve underscores the importance of companionship and unity in fulfilling God's plan for us, and helping us be more fruitful as we fulfill God's plan. Still to this day, whether you're talking about a husband and wife relationship or a close friendship, the necessity for close relationships, it's still 100% true. So a few years ago, my grandma was like doing bad. Like we had this conversation between my parents and my sister and her husband and Christine and I. We were kind of sitting down talking. We're like, I don't know how much longer grandma's going to be around, so you should make sure that you're spending time with her. And I think it was a very real concern, because we thought a couple of months was all we were going to have grandma around for. And she had a fall and she went to the hospital, and like lots of the kind of very characteristic things that when you're in your 90s are going to be problems, right? So she was in the hospital, and the hospital wouldn't release her home because she lived in an apartment in Ivy Lake, and she lived alone, and her neighbor was her only real person other than family. And the hospital wouldn't release her to home and would only release her to a facility that had some amount of care. And so they released her out to Claremont. We managed to get her in there. And that Claremont Seniors Facility, it has like bridge, it has whist, it has crazy old ladies that, my grandma can get along with. And it has dancing, and it has like country little jamborees or whatever come in and do stuff. And grandma, in a matter of literally weeks of being there, she shed years. It's like she turned 80 instead of 93. It's crazy how much of an impact relationships have on our physical well-being. And it's just one of those powerful things that you don't think about until you don't have it, right? So your physical well-being, your spiritual well-being is all tied into relationships. Now, as I was praying for this again, I was reading through my Bible, and I came through, and I was looking at biblical friendships, and I came to one of my favorite ones, which is Jonathan and David. If you don't know the story, Jonathan is the son of the king. The king is legitimately jealous or fearful that David will take over his kingdom, because it's actually prophesied. Like, everyone knows that David is the future of Israel. And so Jonathan, being the son of the king that is trying to literally hunt and kill David, should be David's enemy, right? Like, that's kind of a no-brainer, that the enemy of my friend is my enemy kind of thing. So these two guys should have been enemy. They should have been fighting against each other or some animosity, but they ended up meeting each other when they were younger, before there was animosity or before there was anger between Saul and David, and they built a bond, an unbreakable bond. And as they're doing that, I was kind of going back and forth through Scripture, and I came across Matthew 22, 36 to 40, and it says, this is Jesus being tested by the Pharisees, and the Pharisees are coming at him being like, hey, Jesus, what's the most important law? And Jesus, being the one who has all of Scripture tied up in him, he says, so they said, teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and a second is like it. Love the neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these two commandments. And if you go back to the law, if you go back to the 10 Commandments, they literally love the Lord your God, love people as yourself. Those two things, if you're doing those two things by themselves, they summarize all of the 10 Commandments. They summarize everything as to how you're supposed to live, and in that order. So Jonathan's devotion to David, he was living out that Matthew 22 way of living, way of seeing things. He loved David as himself. And it's one of those things where I really want, like when I make decisions, when we decided to take Liam from the school he was at to the school, we moved him to the Christian school here, the reason I did that is relationships. I wanted my son to have relationships that he could live and flourish through. And again, that has bore fruit for us in so many ways. It's the fact that relationships are just tied up so much in everything you do is so critical for all of your life. Now, David and Jonathan's story, it doesn't end there. Jonathan ends up dying. And what does David do with that relationship? He actually takes Jonathan's kids and his family in and treats them as his own family. And it's just friendship, relationships, that bond, it lives on past the grave. And yeah. Jesus also had some friends. Jesus walked the countryside with his 12 best friends, and they did absolutely amazing, miraculous things and transformed the world. Like, I was looking at the most influential list of the most influential people in all of history, and Jesus is at the top of basically every one of those lists. And the reason he's at the top of those lists is because he built relationships that lasted and mattered and transformed human history. His relationships aren't just like some flimsy thing where when he kicks the bucket on the cross, that seems terrible to say. When he dies on the cross, they don't just stop. They continue on. They continue to have energy and momentum and build all that we have today. He surrounded himself with disciples and friends and followers who walked alongside him. In John 15, 12 to 13, he said, "This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone would lay down his life for his friends." Through Jesus' sacrificial love, dying on the cross for you and me, Jesus not only showed the depth of God's love, but also emphasized the power of selflessness, Christ-centered relationships. So, following Christ's example, his disciples moved forward, living lives devoted to the kingdom by living lives focused on God and each other. Another way, so the Bible gives us another area where relationships will help us grow and develop. We're all growing and developing as people, and we all need people to help us become what we want to be. Proverbs 27:17 says that iron sharpens iron, and one man sharpens another. Our interactions with the believers around us help us grow spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. Just as iron sharpens iron through friction with another piece of iron, we too become refined and mature through the challenges and opportunities of growth with other people. One lesson I can think can be taken away from this is knives. I know there's going to be a couple of people that will know the answer to this. What's the most dangerous kind of knife?
A dull one.
There we go, a dull one. A dull knife is the most dangerous kind of knife because you have to force it, you have to push it, you have to exert a whole bunch more energy on it, and it becomes much more likely to slip and damage something around it. If we as people begin to develop and really pour into relationships, and we begin to have the rough edges taken off of us, and we begin to be sharper and more precise and more able to do the things we're called to do by being in relationship with people, we're going to be a more useful tool, and we'll be able to do the job we're intended to do better because we're around people. So, when we're not growing through relationships with others, we can become dangerous to the people we interact with, sometimes inflicting wounds that can break relationship. This is one more reason to pursue meaningful friendships. There needs to be a person in your life that will sharpen you and redirect you so that you can grow correctly. Whether through accountability, encouragement, or shared wisdom, our connections with others will refine our character and deepen our faith. So Galatians 6:2 says, "Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you'll fulfill the law of Christ." We are actually another thing we're made to do through relationships is carry each other's burdens. We're meant to take on and help someone as they work through whatever struggles there might be in life. And relationships are a critical piece. I don't want to spend too much time, but over the last few years, you saw people that were struggling so deeply with all the things of life, and the less people they had around them, the more likely they were to succumb to those struggles. Having people around you is a critical piece to being able to weather life's storms. Our Christian journey is not meant to be traversed alone. When we build our relationships rooted in love and empathy, we create safe spaces to share our struggles and triumphs. By walking alongside one another in need, we exemplify Christ's compassion and create bonds that foster healing and growth. Another thing we're meant to do is we're meant to help each other grow. Paul's letters are filled with times when the people of God are being used to help each other grow closer to God as they grow closer to each other. In Colossians chapter 4, this is a bit of a long verse. I'm sorry. I don't like to read too much off my screen, but Colossians 7-18 says, Tychicus will Tychicus will tell you all the news about me. He is a dear brother, a faithful minister, and fellow servant in the Lord. I am sending him to you with the express purpose that you might know about our circumstances and that he might encourage your hearts. He is coming with Onesimus, our faithful and dear brother, who is one of you. They will tell you everything that's happening here. My fellow prisoner, Aristarchus, sends you his greetings, as does Mark, Mark the cousin of Barnabas. You will receive instructions about him if he comes to you. Welcome him. Jesus, who is called Justus, also sends greetings. These are the only Jews among my coworkers for the kingdom of God, and they have proved a comfort to me. Epaphras, who is one of you and a servant of Jesus Christ, sends greetings. He is always wrestling in prayer for you, that you may stand firm in the will of God, mature and fully assured. I vouch for him that he is working hard for you and those of Laodicea and Hierapolis. Our dear friend Luke, the doctor, Demas, send greetings. Give my greetings to our brothers in Laodicea and to Nympha and to the church in her house. After this letter has been read to you, see that it is read to the whole church in Laodiceans, and in turn read the letter from Laodicea. Tell Archippus, see that you complete the ministry you have been received with the Lord. I, Paul, greet you with this greeting in my own hand. Remember my chains. Grace be with you. Paul mentions 8 different people in that little span. This is the closing of his letter. He's like giving shout outs to all of his friends. 8 different people. He's just like, yeah, and remember so-and-so, and so-and-so's coming. And these guys, and this is a guy who's in prison. You have to think, a guy who's in prison is going to have so much higher need for relationship than almost anyone else in the world. And all he can think about are all of his people that are in every different part of his ministry circle. And the people that are coming to him and bringing him things and helping him out and helping spread the gospel, even as he's locked up. In Romans, he mentions 33 different people that are ministry workers that are either ministering to him or to the small churches or ministering to individuals. If this isn't a clear enough indication to the church as to how we're supposed to work, then I don't know what is. Paul continually poured himself into others to help him grow, or to help them grow. And those same people gave back to Paul and encouraged him as he traveled and suffered. Just yesterday, Christine and I were out shopping, and we were just looking for a shirt or something, and we stopped into the store, and up walks this elderly man. His name's Edward. He's a fairly famous in Grand Prairie entrepreneur. And Edward walks up to us and says, I feel like I should talk to you guys about some things. And he talked to us about his whole life story from the time he was a young man growing up in Saskatchewan to where he's at today as a father of an entrepreneur and in a senior's home and all those kinds of things, and how he likes to get out of his home and come and, tool around the store and take some signage off some things and put some things back in place, probably wrong places. And I kind of watched some of the people following him along, and just like when he made changing things back. And it was kind of humorous to me on some level. But he walked over and he started talking to us about his life story. And again, I think that if you're doing a good job relationally, there will be opportunities like this that will present themselves where you can grow and learn. So he came up to us and he told us about all the life lessons he had. And one of the things he said just kind of really stuck with me. He said, at a certain age, you realize it isn't about you, and you have to pour out yourself for the benefit of others. He was 21 when he came to that realization. And the reason he had to come to that realization was his dad died. And he was now the man of the house. And he had 7 siblings, the youngest of which was 4, that he was now responsible to help raise and bring up and make sure that they were fine and they were good and they were going to be growing in a way that's meaningful. And so the way he did that was actually by getting out of his comfort zone and walking up to strangers and talking to them, just like he's still doing at 95. Being willing to go out of your way to make sure you're building new relationships or reinforcing the relationships you have is a critical piece to the puzzle of walking a good Christian life for you and I. So, in a former life, I was a car salesman. And I actually really liked selling cars. It was a really good thing for me because it made me get comfortable with being outside of my comfort zone. I had to walk up to strangers, talk to them about things that I had no real knowledge about, but I actually loved it. I realized that for most people who know me, I seem like a complete extrovert, but I am actually pretty shy. So besides learning about cars, there was this one moment in my car sales experience that has stuck with me more than anything else, by a long shot. We were in a meeting, and there was all the car salesmen. I was working for a big auto group, and the owner of the auto group came in, and he was asking a salesman, he said, "So guys, what drives your business? What makes you do what you're going to do?" And my sales manager at the dealership I was working at stood up and he said, and he thought he had the answer. He's like, "When I see two people walk onto the lot, I see $2 bills." Ugh. And this was the guy that was supposed to be leading me in developing as a car salesman, and it felt gross. And the owner guy stands there and he says, "Nope." Just shuts him down. He said, "That is short-sighted and a terrible way to run your business." He said, "What you need to do is you need to look at those two people that walk on the lot as two new friends. A friend will buy another car from you, will send their family and friends to you, you will grow your business as a salesman if that is your focus. If you're looking at everyone as new friends, friends help friends." Now, I'm not saying that we should look at people as commodities that we can get something out of. Quite the opposite. I would say that as a Christian, my job is to meet people. My job is to meet the commands of the Great Commission. I know that this story can feel like I'm trying to get something to people, but it's the farthest thing from my thought. I'm constantly looking to new friends, looking forward to meeting new friends, making new friends, building new relationships, because I know that in Acts 1:8, I'm called to this. I'm told that I'm supposed to do this. You'll receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you'll be my witnesses in Jerusalem and all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. I'm called to meet new people. And whether it be locally here, like that's what he means when he says here in Jerusalem, it means in your home. Or as you guys go out, if you go on a holiday, you meet new people and you get to share some aspect of who you are and what's important to you with people. And I've had hundreds of opportunities, hundreds of times where I've just been walking through some place and someone has stopped and started talking to me about whatever random stuff. And, you know, when that goes really well, I get to ask some of my favorite questions. You know, do you know Jesus? Those kinds of things are opportunities that when I get really good at working on developing new relationships, I get to be an active participant in the inner workings of God's people. If I look at a new person walking through the door of the church as a commodity, I will be significantly less likely to be able to welcome them, to get to know them, to help them find connections and purpose, to disciple them. If I'm excited to find out more about them and help them find their place in the church, and maybe even this church, I'll be so much better at helping them find their best life with God. Now, a couple of tips. I'm not saying this as an expert at relationships. I think I'm decent at it. But my first tip is smile. If you have a smiling face on, a guy like Edward will walk up to you and want to visit with you. I was talking with Liam about this a couple weeks ago, and he was like, "Dad, how do you get people to talk when you're visiting?" Because he was trying to figure out how to just grow his ability to build relationships. And my, smile is one thing, and Liam does that lots. And I told Liam, my second lesson is ask questions. Ask questions. People love to answer questions. They love asking them a question about themselves. You might not know. I'll be really blunt about me. I don't technically belong in a lot of the places that I hang out. There's a lot of rednecks here. Like, sorry. And I'm a teacher. I don't know anything about guns. I don't have any sleds. Quads scare me. Okay? We went on a side-by-side trip a few years ago, and I very nearly wet myself as we were climbing up this little thing. And I got up there the very last. I think someone passed me on a corner to try and like be able to make this thing happen faster. It scared the living snot out of me. I don't belong here. But I do, because I want to build a relationship with the people around me. And so I find out more about what they like. I find out more about why they buy this sled instead of this sled. Ask them questions. They love to talk. And when you do that, they will open up and begin to ask you questions and give you opportunities to share you. And if we all get good at that alone, we'll dramatically improve our ability to grow personally, grow our church, and grow God's kingdom. Listen. That's my next strategy. Listen to people. Actually take time when you ask them a question, listen to their answer. Think about what they say. You don't have to commit it to memory. You don't have to know every little in and out of things, but if you listen to them, you'll remember some aspects of their story, and you'll be able to bring that up the next time you see them, and those things help foster relationships. Next, don't be in a rush. Take your time. Good relationships take time. We have a saying here at our church, time over time. It's important. It's a core principle of our church, taking time over time to build good relationships so that we can have the biggest impact we can on people's lives. So, when you reach a certain age, you realize it isn't about you, and you have to give of yourself. Edward's word coming back to me again. So, this is one of my favorite little pieces in the Bible. This is Acts chapter 2, verse 42 to 47. This is the brand new, fledgling, little baby church that has just emerged after Christ's crucifixion. These are people that are literally living in fear of the persecution that they could face. So, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to breaking of bread and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs performed by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the court temples. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. I'm just going to pause there for 1 second. Praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. They were living in fear of a repressive, oppressive time period for Christianity, and everyone that they bumped into, everyone that they started meeting with as they praised God, loved them because they were doing it all with a sincere heart. So going back there, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people, and the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. When I think about Grand Prairie, the reason why I spend time getting good at building relationships is because the next person that walks through the door of our church might be a person who needs to get to know Jesus. Might be the first time they're learning that lesson, the first time they're meeting Jesus face to face through me, through the teaching here, through the Bible. And again, I can do so much better job at reaching those people if I get good at building relationships. The band can come back up here. I'm almost done. Friendships, as I said before, haven't always been easy to me. In my younger years, I was cripplingly shy. I would not go outside of my inner circle of people. I've worked really hard as I matured to get better at meeting people, connecting with them, and helping them find connections. I hope we can remember that we're made for community. Every relationship in our lives has the potential to shape us, challenge us, and inspire us towards greater Christ-likeness. I hope we can actively embrace relationships as a divine gift. Actually, I love that phrase, a divine gift. The people that are in your life are a divine gift for you, appointed by God. Seeking to love, serve, and grow together as we journey towards the ultimate relationship with Jesus. May our relationships be a source of joy, growth, and spiritual transformation. And I hope that we can develop skills to help us reach those in our lives that need to meet Jesus.
Hello? Both are working.
Both are working.
Thank you, Tyler. Great message on the relationship. Give him a round of applause. Good job, Tyler. I want to thank Tyler for saying he was not going to stand up here and do this kind of thing, and here he is. And the story is the same for quite a few people that I know. And the truth of the matter is, the reason Tyler's standing up here is actually for the sake of relationship. And through Tyler's words today, you might have heard about Jesus, and the truth of the matter is, the reason that Jesus came down to this earth was to fix something that was broken, and that thing that was broken was relationship. And there was a separation that happened between us and God the Father because of our broken relationship with Him, where we said, you know what, I can do this on my own, I can do it a different way. And if that's you this morning, that you're like, man, there's something missing in my heart, and you realize that maybe this morning that gap in yourself is actually the relationship that's missing with Christ Jesus, we'd love to introduce you to Him this morning. And so in a moment, we're gonna sing one last song, and we'll have people on the sides that can pray with you. And if that's you this morning, that you need a relationship with God, I'd encourage you to come, and we'll pray with you, and we'll introduce you to Jesus. I guarantee you that your life will be dramatically transformed. The other thing is that maybe relationships aren't really a default for you. I read recently that our generation is the loneliest generation that's ever existed. And that doesn't really make sense, because the ability for us to connect is so prevalent, and yet for some reason we're lonely. And I think the truth of the matter is that this has a lot to do with it, but this is just a tool. It's not our phones that keep us from relationship with each other. It's that the enemy has a plan to divide relationship in the same way that he came and facilitated the division of people from God. He's trying to create division in people today. And the truth is that it used to be maybe that the default was that we had relationships because it was inherent in what it took to live. But the truth is, now you can live your life without talking to anyone. You can go through your entire week without talking to anyone. You don't even have to go to the grocery store. You just push a button and someone drops it off, and they don't even need to interact with you and say, hey, sign this paper, I dropped this off. They just leave it on your doorstep. The truth is that we need relationships, so it's so important to the function of us as human beings. And I love what Tyler said about his grandma and how when she came into relationship, she shed years. And the truth of the matter is that people bring us life in the same way that God brings us life. And his word says that we are created in the image of Christ Jesus. We are actually creative beings. And that's why the interaction between people is so important, is because we can actually speak life or death into other people's lives. We can speak light or darkness. We can speak truth or lies into people's lives. And that's why relationship is so important, and also at the same time can be so damaging. And so this morning, if you have a need relationally that you'd like us to pray with you, even if you want to just take the next step and say, you know what, I know Jesus, and I want those around me to know Jesus, but I'm just terrified to talk to new people, or I stutter every time I go to talk with someone. We'd love to talk and pray with you about that today as well. So let's sing this last song, and if you'd like some prayer this morning, come on up and we'll pray with you.